Hello guys, my name is JP. I'm here to tell you to relax and have diorite. Or diorite? Same thing. Putting this stuff away from that very sudden random caving expedition from a minute ago. Just putting this here now because, well, I kind of need some of this. Gunpowder goes in there. Iron, gold, saddle. I'll put the saddle where it goes along with the golden apple. I don't need any more cobblestone right this second. Iron ore, where did I have that? I'll put the meat away. If you hadn't noticed, the chests are slightly more organized now. Don't go in the pen, you moron. Go away. Oh, I guess I'm out of space for him. Who wants it? I can glue it for that dog. Gray wool. I give the dog the extra meat now, because why not? The cow. It's coming right at me. It's coming right at me! Ugh. Okay. This one here, this one here. Here's where all the extra horse stuff goes. For the horses, of course. I need more wood for the torches. Let's use this. Never have too many torches. That's enough for 2 stacks, so I'll just leave it like that for now. And let me see how much of this stone is done. See if we can lay out. Yeah, I can do it now. Kind of an outline for the baseball stadium. You get some of the leveling done, hopefully. And this time, since I'm not actually doing much other than just kind of setting this up, I can get straight to the talking. It's almost like a one-person podcast now. Just kind of pick a topic and talk about it. But that's what I do in this. If you think about it, it basically is a podcast, other than having video to go along with it. I think I need to level this out. Yeah, I definitely need to level this out. So yeah, last time's topic was basically racism, hate. I don't know. I still don't know what to call it. Because it's not just racism, it's everything. And what I ended on is that what helps the most is children being exposed to other cultures and people from almost as young an age as possible. Because whatever is normal to you isn't going to be picked. You're not going to pick on. It wouldn't make sense. And obviously, diversity is what defines what's normal for you. At least as far as cultural and the like. And the other part of that is what to do, like with adults, like I mentioned in the last one. The example they gave on Armchair Expert was it was like a skinhead or KKK. It was one of the two. A very otherwise violent group, and it became personal for them when they made a friend. Really, that's literally all it came down to. I wish I had looked it up at least in between the episodes so I could explain it better, but what it came down to is this group of otherwise violent and racist people befriended somebody of the race that they were always apparently so against. And once they did, it changed for them. It came down to them wanting to defend that person because that person was their friend. So almost what it seems is that as a child, it doesn't have to be personal. You can just be people you're around, people you know. Just because you're around them. That's what becomes normal to you. But as an adult, it requires some emotional depth to it. It has to be personal for it to get through to you sometimes. And that brings us all the way back around to the point of the way things have gotten now in the United States. I mean, apparently everybody suddenly hates each other. Nobody wants anything to do with each other at all. Every group of people is just completely isolated again. And it's like the 1950s, where while oddly enough people think that was like the greatest time in American history, where it was post-war, everything was booming, the economy was insane. That was also some of the most when I use the word exclusive, I don't mean exclusive in a good way. I mean where if you were gay or a person of color or of a religion that wasn't the normal for the area, then you were almost definitely being treated very, very poorly, if not violently. I might have to take some of this down. Pretty sure. I'll just go and do it. And while a lot of people think that was a great time in our history, like it's kind of romanticized now at this point, like it was people living out the American dream or this or that. It was in fact it was, I don't want to say rough, because it was bad for the people experiencing it, but it was kind of a time when people chose to turn a blind eye to bad things that were going on around them. And the great evil of the time back then, of course, was communism, which almost doesn't exist anymore. At least as a organized government. Soviet Union collapsed. Almost all of the old Soviet bloc countries are now. I say almost all because we all know what happened in Ukraine. So they're almost all independent. And things are quite different from how they were back then. But when people say they want to go back to that simpler time, they completely forget that it was not the best for, honestly, probably a majority of the people who had to live during that time. I remember an interesting story. He wasn't actually my grandfather because he married my grandmother. Obviously long before I was born, but he married my grandmother. It was not physically grandfather. But the story he told me once was back during the segregation times. Even places like San Antonio had segregated areas, despite being vastly majority Hispanic. That wouldn't even make sense. And part of the problem with that, with trying to segregate based on skin color in San Antonio, is that a lot of people don't seem to realize that there are white Mexicans. There are a lot of Mexicans of Spanish descent, like straight up Spanish descent. Spain being a European country, while having usually darker hair and dark eyes, are white. Very white. And even more interestingly, there is a lot of... If you've ever heard Mexican... Like, if you've ever accidentally heard like a Mexican radio station or something, it sounds a lot like polka, but with Spanish words. There's a reason it sounds like polka, because there were a lot of German immigrants to Mexico. I want to say right after like World War I. Just because I can't say for certain, but I think Mexico's involvement in World War I was fairly minimal. They had fairly recently gained independence from Spain, so I think they were kind of off the hook for that one. Well, relatively recently, 1830s, I think. I don't remember. But as far as just how things worked out, obviously because of the way things were during World War I and then World War II, it was safer for Germans to settle in Mexico than it was in the United States. And so that does lead to a lot of white Mexicans. Straight up Mexicans, they're from Mexico, but they are white. And my step-grandfather was one of them. The last name was Cervantes, so I'd imagine Spanish descent. And the story he told me was back when stuff was segregated, he would hang out with his Hispanic friends, because he was Hispanic and had Hispanic friends, and they weren't allowed into places, but he was, just based on the skin color. They would just assume he was just a regular white guy. And that was kind of the story, meaning that the ridiculousness of it, that I mean, especially in a place where even when he's not the minority, is still separated and treated as such. Or even when he was the minority, he was still treated as not one of them, just because he didn't look like them. And that just brings on a whole nother mess of complication. Like, for some reason, Texas it's considered a red state. It is very I'm trying not to use strictly political terms that people in Europe aren't going to know, but Republican, which is a more conservative political party in the United States. And how that applies to Texas, I have no clue. You go to Houston, it's mostly, I don't want to say mostly, but it is very heavily populated with people of color, both black and Hispanic. And Asian, as far as I know. I think. Like, they have a pretty big Asian population. San Antonio does too, but not quite as prominent. And then San Antonio is almost entirely Hispanic. Like I know where to go for white stuff. And there is areas where white people, they don't go without locking their car doors, because it is predominantly Hispanic, and if you're not Hispanic, can be quite rough. Mostly due to gang violence. Although the thing about the gang violence is it is usually directed, like it's gangs against gangs. They don't go around usually messing with other people. It's all drug related, and it's unusually complex. You would think it was just gangs and it's like Mad Max or something, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. And then the east side of San Antonio is predominantly black. And same with Austin. Austin is really, really diverse. Like, I don't know Austin very well, other than it's weird. And that is the thing. These are three of the major cities, all of them having a population of 1 million plus, especially if you include the metropolitan areas for these cities. And yet, somehow, it's called gerrymandering, is what it is. It's where the political district lines are drawn in a way that favors one political party or the other. And Texas is very bad with that. As is Ohio, is what I've been told, although Ohio finally voted it out. They're gonna fix that shit by 2020. So they say. And all this extra crap carrying around now. Let's put the apples in there for now. I'll grab some more dirt. Texas is, like, you think South Texas. What is it on the border of? Mexico. So what do you think it has a lot of? Mexicans. And yet somehow it is one of the most hardcore Republican states in the United States. And it makes no sense. It's just so big that if you draw it so that the North Texas gets more weight in elections, that the more rural areas, that would be farms, get more weight in an election than the cities do. That's exactly what happens, and that's exactly what they did, and it has been that way since basically the beginning of Texas. Like, if you did ever split it up to, if you did split, Texas is one of the couple of states that has the legal right to split itself into multiple states. If you ever did, the majority of those states would be Democratic leaning, just because that's the way the population is in those areas. Center it right here. 5. $10, $11, $12, $13. And this is just the front side. It's going to go pretty much as far as it can in each direction, and then kind of round around the backside. This should work. But yeah, America is, I'm gonna basically end the episode already again too, is America is completely screwed, and if everybody's going to separate and knee-jerk react to each other, and everybody wants to be everybody's enemy, then it's not going to change anytime soon. Doesn't matter who's in charge. So, while things can get better, it has to be on a personal level, because no amount of political change overall is going to change anything. Individual people are still going to be the same as they've always been. And that is without diversity, without any kind of interaction with anybody who isn't in their normal, nothing's going to happen. So, just something to consider, I guess. Something to think about. That'll do for today. My name is JP, and I'll see you next time.